process. So today, I'm going to try to talk for about half an hour about why lab work is so important for optimal health. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself as we go. No need to save questions for the end. I've tried not to overstuff the burrito here with content, so we have time to chat if you have any questions. But I really feel like lab work is such a critical piece for an optimal health challenge and just optimal health in general. And I know it's intimidating sometimes to really dive into blood testing. People sometimes don't like to get results of things because something might show up that they don't want to know about. But the more you know about yourself and the more you can see how your body's functioning, really the better you can pinpoint what interventions are going to be best for you for your long-term health and for your goals. So okay, so just quickly, I think I know all of you on this call, I'm pretty sure. But if anybody hasn't met me yet, I'm Dr. Jen. I'm a naturopath, and I do a lot of blood work for my patients. I really love optimal health, love optimal training, and really finding the groove in your life that allows you to have the most energy that you can live with and just feel really great day to day. I think that's so important. So I'm really passionate about that. I love working at LP and helping everybody there because I feel like it's such a great group of people who really care about, what's going on in their bodies too. So why do blood work? Let's just quickly start with that. First and foremost, I love a yearly baseline. I think it used to be much more common that your family doctor would do a yearly baseline of some kind for you. And it seems like over time that's getting less and less. Now it's every 2 years, some things every 5 years. But if you can really keep on top of your health and watch what's happening year over year, it becomes such an important place to watch, what's happening in your body and to learn what's normal for you, what isn't, and to understand why you're feeling off or what's going on. So first and foremost, I always recommend a yearly baseline of blood work, looking at your blood cell counts, your liver, your kidney function, your inflammation, your thyroid, your hormone, all those pieces, they change over time. So having this nice yearly cadence is awesome. And actually, funny, one of my clients is an accountant, and I just started working with her recently, and she sent me the most beautiful spreadsheet of all of her blood tests that she has done every year in a chart. She's put them in a nice, like, accounting style thing so she can really see the trend for every single marker, which I thought was so cute and very accountant-like and very helpful for me. So, but it's cool what you can see happening over time. So even before I saw her as a patient, I could look at her yearly trend over the last 5 years, and I could tell when she changed her diet, for example, when she started working on her health, when she started exercising, just for the numbers before I even talked to her, just because you can really see those things changing in your blood work. The next thing is, as I mentioned, to catch modifiable trends early. So looking at your blood is not always a scary thing because something could be wrong. It's actually a really great way to see things changing in a direction you might not want. So maybe you can see that, your cholesterol is slowly creeping up, or that your blood glucose is changing over time. Maybe you're starting to build up some chronic inflammation. So the more we can catch these modifiable trends, the easier it is to do something about it. So I love blood work for that purpose. Another reason that you might want to do blood work is if your body is not following predicted outcomes. When I was listening to Michelle's chat a couple weeks ago, she was talking about, if if your body fat percentage is this, you're probably doing this. You're probably having an extra snack here. You're probably, and there's like a formula. There's a way that the body typically responds to different types of lifestyles and interventions. And there's a lot of people that come to see me that aren't following the pattern the expected pattern. So, if you're somebody who's really struggling with something that should be changing that you don't feel is, blood work can really get to the root of what could be going on for you. If you're eating everything right and you're exercising and you're doing everything that Adam and Michelle are telling you to do, and still nothing is changing, blood work is a great way to go a little deeper and find out why. And, there's a lot of common misdiagnosis issues when people aren't doing blood work. So things like burnout that we can see in blood work, low vitamin status or struggles with, vitamin absorption, early perimenopause. A lot of people don't catch that, or andropause, which is where your testosterone starts to go down. Glucose dysregulation, that systemic simmering inflammation where you're not in a full-blown, arthritic, eruption, but you've got this low grade inflammation. Things don't feel quite right. Or, subclinical hypothyroid. That's where, your numbers are not great, but they're still in the normal range. So most doctors won't even flag that, even though you're feeling tired and sluggish and you're gaining weight and, things feel wrong. So there's lots of things that we miss because we don't think to do that extra layer of testing. And these go on for a really long time for some people, and they become much more difficult to deal with. So that's another reason you would do blood work. And then lastly, optimal health and vitality and energy. There's often in the normal range of blood work, there is a pretty big margin. So if you're not feeling like you're operating at your best, if you feel mentally or physically sluggish or like you just don't feel optimal. Often there's some really modifiable things that we might be able to pick up in your blood work. Maybe your vitamin D is low. That's a common one in Canada where the recommended 1,000 IU a day has been shown not to get people up past the deficient level. So maybe you're a person who needs more vitamin D, for example. There's a million things that we can find that you can really start to fine tune your health. So, things that your doctor might not check. So, even if you go for a routine blood work every year, something that I often do for my patients is when they're going for their annual blood work check, we'll go over their requisition and see if there's anything extra that their doctor may not be checking that would be really good for them to know. So, things like their inflammatory markers. I'm surprised at how many doctors don't check that as a routine check. Hormones. Both for women and kind of that perimenopausal range, it's really nice to know what your hormones are doing. But also for men, I mean, your testosterone and your cortisol, your DHEA are all playing a really big role in how you're training, how you're recovering, how you're feeling. So those are really important things to look at. Some of your nutrients, those don't go on normal panels, vitamin D. So in Canada, the common the common thing that happens is doctors are just told, don't test vitamin D, just give vitamin D. Everybody should be taking it. And the recommendation, as I said, is 1,000 IU. But the research shows that that's not enough for most Canadians, given our lovely winter, that we need a bit more vitamin D to be in an optimal vitamin D state. So these are important things to check. And then things like early lipids. I often have patients in their 20s and 30s who are coming in, and you can see that their cholesterol or their triglycerides are either on the border or just outside the normal range. So, earlier than you might think, it's important to see what these numbers look like in your body. Insulin tracking, cortisol, and your stress management. So, there's lots of things that you can add to your routine yearly check that I think are really, really valuable to know about yourself. Okay. So I want to talk a bit about some of the testing that we can do. So, dynamic testing is testing that shows how our body is responding to something. So, one of the big tests that I really, really like to do is an insulin glucose challenge. And that's where you drink that glucose solution. Some of you, I feel like, maybe have done that test with me in the past. And then your blood's taken over the course of 2 hours, and we can see both what happens to your glucose and to your insulin. So, that alone, how your body responds to loads of glucose, and carbohydrates, can be a silent stressor that affects how the rest of your body is performing. It's not something we can see. Most people have no idea what their body is doing when they have carbohydrates. And I'm going to show you some pictures of some very different patterns that you can see just to show you all of these patients that I'll show as examples. They all are experiencing some kind of symptom, but not one that they would ever pin to their glucose. So maybe they're feeling just brain fog, or they're not losing weight, or um, they're having trouble building muscle mass. These are all different ways that your glucose metabolism might be affecting you, but it's silent. So, really important to check. Other things like your cortisol and DHEA, the way that these two map up against each other shows whether or not you're in acute stages of burnout, whether or not, your adrenal glands are completely not functioning anymore. There's all different outcomes of doing this kind of testing. So we can see a lot about what's happening in the body dynamically, and these pathways really do change over time. So here's some examples of what I mean by that insulin glucose challenge. And I think this one's really important because this is one of like the biggest factors that I think go unnoticed in patients that has a huge impact on their optimal health. And most of the time, what I have noticed is that people will have these abnormal insulin glucose curves, but their fasting glucose will be fine. And so they don't get flagged as somebody who is diabetic or pre-diabetic because their fasting glucose is fine. And yet when we actually do this test, we can see a lot of variation. So here I just want to point out, so usually what happens, this is a normal curve. So what usually happens is after you drink the glucose solution, you have your fasting sugar here, your sugar goes up, your body releases insulin to a peak of 1 hour, and then your sugar starts to come down, your insulin starts to come down. So they both follow a curve, they kind of chase each other. And ideally, that's what we want to happen when we have glucose or carbohydrates. We want our body to, as your blood sugar starts to go up, you release insulin. The insulin does its job, it pushes the glucose into your cells where you can use it. This is an example of an abnormal glucose curve. So here we can see that after the person had sugar, their blood sugar went up to 11. Ideally, this should be under 8. And their body released a huge amount of insulin, trying because they note like this is too high. So a massive amount of insulin is released here, which makes you feel sluggish, often gives you brain fog. This high insulin doesn't feel very good in your body either. That slowly starts to work to bring the glucose down. And by 2 hours, we're still not back in the normal range, and the insulin's slowly starting to come down. So, this is what they're talking about when they say insulin resistance. Your body is producing a ton of insulin, but it's not really doing its job. And so, what happens here is a really unique situation where you have a lot of circulating glucose, but actually your cells are starving. So it's like you're full, like your body thinks you have enough sugar. So it starts to make fat and store all that sugar. But actually, where you need the sugar in your cells, those cells are not getting what they need. So it's a really interesting and important thing to know because there's a lot we can do to fix this curve if it looks like this, and get your body the fuel that it needs to function well. Here's another example. Oh, yeah, similar kind of problem. Lots of insulin being produced. Sugars are going too high. And then again, this is another example of insulin resistance. And, oh, okay. And then this is another, sorry, I'm just gonna let someone in here. And then there's a curve like this. So what's happening in this person's body is that they're not producing enough insulin. So their blood sugar goes up quite high, but they only release 287 millimoles per liter of insulin, which is not nearly enough to bring their blood sugar back down. So they're struggling to produce enough insulin. So between these two different people, there's different interventions that can help to support, but this is a low insulin patient. And then again, there's somebody like this. So here we have a high amount of insulin produced in response to this little jump in blood sugar, which then drops the sugar super quickly, even within an hour. So you imagine this is the kind of person you've eaten, 75 grams of carbohydrates is like 2 pieces of bread. But within an hour, your blood sugar is already dropping too low. And then in this case, this blood sugar came up again because the liver starts to release sugar because it's in a bit of a panic because this blood sugar drop is so fast that your body thinks it's going to go into like a hypoglycemic state. So then your body starts to pump out sugar. So this is another example of somebody who would be struggling maybe with, um, sustaining their energy during a workout, for example. People who follow this pattern are often having these drops in blood sugar and like everything looks fine until this moment. But then they're also struggling to lose fat because their body thinks that they're starving, or that they're going to go into this hypoglycemic state. So then they start to store more and more resources. So they might also be struggling to lose weight. So you can see there's all sorts of different things you can see in blood work. Some of it dynamic like this. So again, this is somebody with high cortisol, but really low DHEA. So this shows like a pretty extreme amount of burnout. This hormone should be produced in much higher amounts by the adrenal glands, but this person's adrenal glands aren't working as they should, likely because they're under a higher amount of stress than they should be. So there's all sorts of nuanced things that we can see in blood work. Then there's these time trend tests, and those I think are things that are changing over time. So, for example, your hormones, your inflammatory markers, your nutrients, your testosterone over time. So, these are things that we can see and track over time. So, that's another thing that we might do in blood work. I'm going to pause there for a second. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? I just wanted to share some examples. There's so many things that we can learn from blood work, but I hope you could get a bit of an idea of how nuanced it can really be for people and how important it is to understand, what's happening in your own body. Any questions about that? Okay, so if you want to do blood work testing through the gym and have that interpreted, the what I like to start with is just having people book a free consult with me. It's only 10 or 15 minutes. And in that consult, we can go through whether or not blood work is, right for you. We can look at what blood work you've already had done recently and what's missing, and put together a plan for what would be good to know as a next step about your health. And I think it's important because some of the panels are great, and I do recommend them often, but sometimes they're missing one or two things that, based on your symptoms, would be really great to check. So this free consult just allows us to talk through a little bit any special symptoms or concerns or goals that you have, so we can make sure that when you do go to the lab to get your testing done, we get everything we need, and then we can sit down and interpret. So you can do that on through Jane, I think is the booking system that's how people book, right, Adam? Thumbs up? Yeah, yeah. Okay, awesome. So you can just find a time that works. And I've included my email too. If the times that are in the calendar don't work for you, you can always email me and we'll find a time outside of that to connect. And that is my summary of why blood work is an important part of your optimal health. Um, okay.
I'll here
Oh,
because it won't echo like it was before. Can I
oh,
ask
all good.
a question?
Yeah.
Um, I know we've talked about this a little bit in some of the other presentations with you. Um, Different or similar blood work depending on, and I know you'll talk about this in the one-on-one consult, but depending on your age and your gender and like some of those key markers that you might test with me versus testing with Rhonda. Um, is there
Yeah.
anything like that can be quickly summarized in that perspective, or is that more of a in-depth one-on-one?
So I guess what I'd say is that there is a core of tests that everybody should know about themselves. Some basics like liver and kidney function, your blood cell counts, your cholesterol and triglycerides, some basic blood sugar testing, and your thyroid. There are a couple, so there are some standard tests that I think apply to most people. And then there's some very specific testing that we might look at depending on your gender, your goals. So if you're looking for longevity versus if you're looking for optimal peak performance at that time, and even, when it comes to diet and exercise plans, these are all different, and blood work is no different than that. We can really customize and look at testing the things that matter most for you specifically. So I don't know if that really answers fully your question, but I do think there are some reasons to meet one-on-one to understand what your goals are. Obviously, there's a cost to blood work testing as well, especially when you get into some of the specialized tests that your family doctor is not likely to do for you. So I like to try to come up with the best plan. There are hundreds of blood tests that you can, and it's quite specific to what you need. So, but there's a lot of overlap too. Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
funny that you have
go
to
back and
leave.
forth or else I'm not tech savvy either. So, no, that's great. Thank you. And just for everyone, so it's super simple. Like Dr. Jen said, so you would book a free consult with her to go over specifics for you. And then she would tell us what tests she wants you to get done. And we would fill out that paperwork and we would give that to you. Then you would take that to Life Labs. I think that's the most popular place. And then all the results would go right back to Dr. Jen. And then you can review them with her. So that's kind of like a quick snapshot of like how the whole process works. Because one of the homework pieces in this week's was, when did you have your last blood work done?
Mm-hmm.
And for some people who maybe haven't in a long time, depending on their doctor. And that's how quick and easy it is. Like, you can book the consult with Jen, you can get the paperwork from us, take it to Life Labs and get it done. It takes, maybe a week full circle to get your info back to you.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I think, and even if you have had blood work done recently, there's often missing pieces to what you might have had done with your family doctor, but we don't need to repeat everything. So, if you are planning to meet with me, also plan to have a copy of your most recent blood work done, and then we can determine, what we know from what you have, and then what pieces we might want to add on, what we might want to recheck. When you sit down with a naturopath to go through blood work, we go through a much more in-depth analysis of what's going on in your body too. So not just nothing's flagged, you're good, see you next year, but understanding, what the different markers mean, and where you can optimize your health. So I think that piece too, even if you've just had blood work done, it's like a second opinion, that we can dive into and just make sure that, the information gleaned from your blood work is the most useful for you, and tangible in your life. So, does anybody else have any other questions? Rhonda, I saw you unmuted yourself and then muted yourself again. Or is that you? You're good. Okay, awesome. Okay, well, thanks for joining me tonight. And I think some of you have had your blood work done already, which is awesome. But for those of you who haven't, I'll look forward to meeting with you. Even if you just want to chat for 10 minutes about whether blood work's right for you, I'm always happy to have those conversations. So thanks, Tracy, for your comment too. Yeah, there's lots to be learned. So thank you. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Yeah, no problem. Bye.
Bye.